Ruby Tuesday and JavaScript Penang number 3.
Yay.
So this meetup is proudly brought to you by KL Ruby Brigade and Kuala Lumpur JavaScript group. So there's 2 links there. You can go to the Ruby Malaysia meetup link or the Kuala Lumpur JS Facebook group. So Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi for this space is settlement guest, and the password is settle in, all small letters. Good. So the sponsor for our event is Settlements. So they have a very cool co-working space in Penang, and then do check them out in HTTP settlements.org. Okay. So let's close the music, and then I'm Gui. I'm the organizer of Ruby Meetup in Ruby Tuesday in Penang, and also JavaScript Meetup. So anyone here is a programmer? Okay. First time?
Right.
Okay. Cool. So you're from?
Sorry, I don't know anything about JavaScript.
Okay, Ruby. Just join in to
Just
see.
going to know because I'm looking for a CTO actually for
Okay.
my, set up the company.
Cool. So good.
That's fine.
Yep, great. So for the first stop, we will have implementing a tracking pixel by Tristan. So Tristan,
Hello.
are you there?
Hi,
Yep.
I'm here.
Cool. So yeah, can take it away.
Am I on the?
Yeah,
board
you're on the
now?
screen.
Okay.
You are on the
Hey,
big screen.
hello. Hi guys. I'm here in KL right now. Let me see if I can share my screen. There you go. All right, cool. All right, can anyone see my screen?
Yep, everyone see it clearly.
Seeing starting the slideshow. Maybe I'm not going to do the slideshow instead. I'm just going to go through the slides like this because it's already loaded. So yeah, I presented this a week ago, and I want to present it again because I feel that a lot of people should really like find out about this because I have a story at the end as well. So I'm Tristan. You can find me Parasquid everywhere else, GitHub, and Facebook, on Twitter, not as much on Twitter as well. There is this application called conf.pw. You can go to conf.pw/myjsrb3, and you can ask questions there, or maybe later we can also do a live question and answer if you want to do more about, like, think about your question first on your phone, then you can just go there. So it's a bit of a backstory on this thing. What we do is we do a lot of client-side applications like this. For example, this is called Mind Valley Home, and it's backed by a Rails application. And one of the features that we were trying to do was something called a masterclass. Now we were working with a third party before that we just acquired, and one of the things that we needed to do was to find out how much did people buy after going through a masterclass or a webinar in this case. And because we were implementing it in our own product, the issue was that we had to also re-implement the tracking pixel in order to track when someone actually buys through the checkout page. And so, okay, I said, let's do that. And I was a bit surprised when my team said that they have no idea how to implement the tracking pixel and that they've never actually implemented the tracking pixel before. All they did was to have the Google tracking pixel like GTM or Google AdSense or Google advertisement or like Keep Analytics or whatever. They just put it on the page and that's their tracking pixel. But actually how it works, they don't know. And so I thought maybe I should make a test project, and I should also try and see if I can teach this old art of tracking pixels from before, why it's called a tracking pixel, and all of the ideas behind why it works. So in order to understand the tracking pixel, we first have to understand what the underlying technologies are. And the underlying technologies of what we're working with is HTTP. You might You might have heard about HTTP. It's a stateless protocol. It means every new request comes without any idea of what the previous request was. So no records are kept for every connection, and each connection is agnostic about the state of the other. If, for example, I request a document once, if I request that document again, the server would consider me as a new request and has no idea that I was the same client that requested that document from before. It doesn't. The advantages of this is that the server does not actually have to maintain the synchronization logic. So you don't have to keep records of which client has connected before and which clients are the same. The client is the one that is doing this. This is great, for example, for intermittent connections when, for example, you're trying to access a page and then you go through a tunnel, so you're not connected anymore. And then you come out of the tunnel and you try to connect again. So since the server did not actually lose you, because it always loses you at the end of every connection, it's fine. As long as the protocol of the client and the client maintains that synchronization logic, it's all good. It makes it easy to cache because since the server has no idea who you are or like what the client is, any other server uh, can step in place of that particular server. So that's why we have all of these CDNs, content delivery networks, which stand in place of your server. You'll have a proxy server, for example, like Squid, which stand in place of your server. It's because for each new request, the server doesn't care whether it's the same person or the same client or it's a different client. So it makes it very, very scalable in terms of the infrastructure of the server side. So there are different ways of maintaining state that this is not an exhaustive list. So one of the things that you might have immediately thought of would be cookies to maintain state. But before cookies, there were like URL parameters. So you might see, for example, in WordPress, let's say, you will always have, no, not WordPress, like even before that, like in other PHP programs, once you log in, you will receive a token, and that token is appended as a URL parameter for every request you make for that server. And that's how the server remembers you, because you're sending the token over and over for every connection. There's also something like IP binding. So let's say, this is way before we actually ran out of IPv4 addresses. One device can be considered like this, like one IP can be mapped directly to one device. And so we can consider, for example, one IP connecting to your server, and the server would see, okay, it's this from the same IP. I would assume that this is from the same device, and that's how you would track it. Of course, in this era that we already ran out of IPv4 addresses, and we don't actually have good infrastructure to support IPv6, this is not a very good way of tracking. Another way of tracking would be hidden form fields. So this is, if you're doing Rails, for example, in Ruby, you might, or maybe Node Express, you might have this thing called the CSRF meta tags for cross-site resource forgery, an anti-cross-site resource forgery. So it's similar in function. The server will send inside the page a hidden form field, let's say like including a token, or maybe part of the body, it will write a particular token. And then every form that you submit will need to include that particular token in order for the server to identify that you were the same client that sent a request a few minutes ago, for example. So there are multiple ways. And for this particular session, we will be talking more about cookies and also some other ways of tracking. So this is a screenshot of the code that I will be showing you or demonstrating you later on. This is actually the classic pixel tracker. I'm calling it classic because this is where the pixel tracker came from. This base64 encoded string is actually this the binary encoded version of 1 by 1 pixel that's in PNG format. So this particular request, this is actually Sinatra, by the way, but this should be very similar to how Express does it. The pixel.png, what will happen is that before the server actually gives you the actual image, it will intercept the request, do whatever it needs to do, like find out about, like maybe record this particular transaction first, intercept the cookies, and then send the actual image. And it's called classic again because this is a one-by-one pixel. There are other pixels, pixel trackers, but they're not really a pixel. This is an iframe pixel tracker. So the pixel tracker has kind of caught on because this was the previous one, the one-by-one PNG or GIF before, it was a GIF. This was the way pixel trackers have been operating for a long time until some people started doing iframe pixel trackers. And what would happen actually is that if, for example, the client prevents iframes from firing, the code for the pixel tracker would detect that and then fall back on the classic pixel tracker. So in this case, it will be an iframe, and the host site will need to actually display the iframe. And the iframe, all the iframe contains would be a script that runs on the context of the client browser, but being served by the uh, server that the iframe is coming from. And you'll see as well later on during the demo how everything works, which actually this is the demo. So let me try that. All right, this is not there. Okay. All right, let me just notice this one. Okay, this is the page. You'll see, for example, let me see if I can do a split screen. Okay, this is the page. Let me know if it's too small.
Yeah, you need to zoom in.
Okay. All right, maybe I will need to do it like this then. And then I'll just do a... Oh, okay, it's doing a surface-like thing. Okay, never mind. All right, cool. Okay. I will just run. Okay, so this is the page. You'll see the hello world there, right? And I will get an inspect element. And then you will see some stuff in the information later on. So I refresh the page. You'll see that this was this is not seen because it's a one-by-one pixel, but you'll see on the server side that I was able to get the query parameter and I was able to get the cookie from it. And so that means that my server now gets all of the cookies from this particular host, which is 4567. If, for example, I create a cookie, let's say, how do I create a cookie? Here, like another cookie. This is a test, right? I save that and I refresh it. You'll see that the server is actually able to intercept that and get all of the cookies from your client without having to like actually send anything. All it does is request the image, and that is actually quite powerful. Just by requesting a resource, you're able to retrieve all of the cookies for that particular browser. And that later on, I'll talk about the security implication of it, why we have all of these cores that are single origin like definitions or those things, or like security issues. Another way of doing the pixel tracking would be the iframe, and you see it here. And I'm presenting it actually on the console log, so I'll show you again the iframe. All it does is log hello world, the query string, and also all the cookies. And you can see here that this is actually from the server side as well. It's not, if you do a page source here, you'll see that all the iframe does is actually logging in all of the cookies itself, not not being pulled from JavaScript. Again, the server has access to your cookies in this point and is able to log in. Third thing that I put here, it's not part of the original presentation, but I put it here anyway because this is another way to track, is through your device fingerprint. Now this library called Fingerprint JS, it actually calculates different things about your browser, about your screen orientation, what kind of browser you're using. So for example, this is, I think this is Chrome Canary. What is this? I forgot what browser is this. I think it's Chrome. Okay, it's Chrome, but if, for example, I go for Internet Explorer, I go here, oops. And I don't have a, let me go for instead, normal Chrome. I go here, you'll see that this is a different browser. It's not Canary anymore. And you'll see my fingerprint is different. It's 648, starts with 648, while the other browser, which is Canary, is F0. But if I refresh the browser, it's going to stay the same because this library actually computes the fingerprint of the device itself, not of the browser itself, and not because it's all going to be the same, then it's not going to change. So you'll see here again, the source is just about like getting the fingerprint. It's not storing anything. It's not storing any cookies, nothing from local storage. Okay, so that's just a quick demo of this. Let's go here. Okay, this is actually what comes out when you when a browser requests for data from the server. So let me see if I can. Is it too small again? I don't know how to increase the size of this one, but I can tell net www. I'll just go localhost.
Hey Tris, I think it's Ray is disconnected.
Hello, Tristan.
Yeah.
Hi, the internet just came back.
Oh, okay. So which one? Where did I get cut off?
One more before this. I think we go to the tracking of the pixel. No, the cookies part. Another cookie. We left out from there.
Okay, really? That's quite a long time. Okay, so this is, so we discuss the pixel and the cookie itself, and then that the browser is actually able to retrieve it.
Yep.
Okay, the next one would be the iframe. So the iframe, I showed that, where is it? That it is, well, this is a fresh browser. Where is my, yeah, I showed that this is able to retrieve the cookies as well from the server, from the iframe, because of the iframe, which is another HTTP request, because for every HTTP request that the browser does to the server, it sends along all of its cookies, and that's why this technique also works. Again, it's not really a pixel, it's an iframe, but they're still using the same pixel tracker nomenclature here. And the last one was the fingerprint. The reason why there's two browsers here now is because I wanted to show that even if I refresh this page, it's going to stay the same, but because this is the Canary browser, Google Canary, and this is the Chrome browser, the original Chrome, they have different fingerprints because they're different browsers, but even if I refresh them, it's the same device. Even without using cookies, I can identify which device is actually going through. Okay, is everything caught up?
Yep.
All right. Now what I'm trying to do is, so what I just said is that this is actually what the server communication or whatever actually is going through is happening. So what happens is that Telnet is a great client because it's a text-only client. So you can Telnet into the Universal Resource Identifier, or the URI, including the port, which is 80. Sorry. No, which is 4567 in our case because the server lives in 4567. And what I can do is I can type get / and then protocol, which is HTTP /1.1. and then I type in the host, localhost, then press enter, and then see, this is what the server replies, HTTP 1.1, 200 OK, including that, and it just gives you the page into text files. But everything that I type is actually what's being sent by the browser. So what would happen most of the time would be the browser will send cookies, for example. I'm not sending the cookies in this case because I didn't want to type that, but this is the one of the very like low-level ways of accessing whatever it is on your server. So we've seen that cookies are being sent for every request, and the server will be able to intercept it. And this is one of the reasons why we have these things. I don't know if you're familiar with CORS or like cross-origin resource scripting. It's really, really horrible, especially if you've been working with JavaScript purely on the client side, because you'd like to request a resource, for example, outside of your current domain, and then unless that particular resource had a CORS header on it and allows external access, you're not going to be able to access it through the client. And so you'll have to write like a server-side proxy of retrieving that same resource so that it's going to be originating from your same domain, and then that your client-side script can then retrieve that particular data. Now, why is this so difficult? Again, it's because for every browser request, your cookie, the browser cookies are being sent. And so what happens is that, for example, you have a bank, for example, like a bank site, and then let's say Google suddenly started becoming evil, and then all of your GTM trackers, they started looking at the cookies that are being sent by your browser. And so without the same origin policy, then Google will be able to read the cookies, the session cookies of your bank, and then will be able to log in as you for your bank, for example, right? And because they will be living in two different domains, like Google will be on the google.com domain, and your bank will be on your bank domain, or your own server will be on your own server domain, the cookies don't cross with each other. And if you're using cookies to store sessions, then it's not going to be it's not going to overflow into other servers. And that's also one of the reasons why CORS is quite important. Uh, it's like a side effect of this particular security. There are other ways to track. We've talked about the browser fingerprinting. There are also ways of doing device fingerprinting, for example, where you would, like, for example, in your mobile phone, like you can gather some information, like, let's say, all of the access points, like Wi-Fi access points that you have around you, the Wi-Fi hardware address that is being available to you. So if you have a lower level access to the hardware, then you're able to do that. Most applicable to Android or iPhone applications. There's also this thing called the Evercookie. This was a big hit in the 2010, 2011 when this came out first. Basically, what happens is you have all of these. So we had three, for example, on the index.html I showed you, right? But Evercookie, what happens is that they have a lot more ways of tracking, and every time a particular tracker is deleted, let's say, for example, a cookie was deleted, the tracking cookie was deleted because you went into incognito, you cleared all of your cookies, the other tracking ways will start filling in that information again. So you have to delete, in order to delete an Evercookie, you have to delete them all at the same time. Because if you delete just one of them, all the other trackers will come back and rewrite the same information into that tracker. So it's very, very difficult to remove tracking at that point. And there was all this brouhaha about it, and it's not as useful now, but for historical purposes, you should try and look at it as well. Now, all of this is very, very complicated, and it's not necessarily something that people would immediately get. But I think it's so. This is the time when I feel that when my team actually mentioned that they have no idea how pixel trackers work, and then how HTTP actually worked, I figured that we are doing such crazy, complicated front end JavaScript and interactions and complicated servers serving all of these content when we're actually just scraping the surface of it and we're not diving deep into the basics of our craft. And I believe that in order to start mastering or have mastery of our craft, we need to start going back to the basics, like what exactly are the building blocks of this technology that we're making a living off. If we're a JavaScript developer, how exactly is the JavaScript being executed by the browser? Why is there a difference with ES5 and ES6? Why are browsers so slow um, to move from ES5 to ES6? What are the historical implications of this, aside from the technology as well? So I think it's time for us to step up our game and start looking into the fundamentals of the technology that we're working at. So again, I'm Prayer Squid. Thank you for listening. And you can find me at Twitter, Facebook, or wherever else. If you search Power Squid on the internet, you can find me. If you want some resources, I will be posting this. I don't know where to post it, Louis. So you'll have to tell me where to
I
post
think
this.
we can use back the KL Ruby Brigade. We are
Okay.
using that.
Okay, then that's good. So I'll bump my post, and you'll find here the Git repository of the Pixel demo, some information about iframes and cookies from Mozilla. So they maintain a very good documentation of the technology behind browsers. Panoptic click for checking about your fingerprint, and of course the Ever cookie. This is still alive for historical purposes. So I don't see any questions in the application. I don't know if it's working or nobody just asked questions. But if you have any questions, then sure, I'm cool with it.
I think probably first thing is that tracking. So
Yeah.
for the tracking that you show, does it shows the mouse movement, the heat maps? You able to generate those?
Oh, because I'm not. So I can. So what happens is I need to set an event listener to actually listen to those events and send them. But what's going to happen is instead, so this is how I would do it. Instead of sending it immediately as soon as the event happens, which will it's going to have latency, right? Because for every movement, it's going to send. It's going to be it needs to wait for the server to come back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save it locally into like some structure in memory, for example, and then maybe an interval every 30 seconds to just send the whole history into the server as a chunk.
Mm-hmm. Any question from here about tracking user behavior? Anything? No
Well, it's
one?
not really tracking user behaviors. It's more about the low-level fundamentals of how actual tracking works. It's not just about tracking again the browser. It's like about like it's taking advantage of the fact that cookies are sent for every browser request, but you can actually do something in the middle while the browser. So when the browser, you can even masquerade, like you can see that I was serving a slash pixel.png file,
Yep.
but it's not a file. It's some code plus outputting a file in the end. So from the client, it is a file, but because you're running something in the middle, that's actually where the tracking happens.
Interesting. Yeah, cool. Cool stuff. Any questions add on? No? Okay.
Usually all this tracking is written in the backend language, or is it like JavaScript?
So the question is, yeah, do you hear the question?
Yes, I did hear the question.
Okay.
But anyway, for the video as well, like are all the tracking only done, is the tracking only done on the server side or also on the client side, right? And I've shown actually two of them. The classic pixel tracker happens on the server side because you actually intercept the request before you actually send the file. So instead, when the browser requests pixel.png, instead of immediately giving you the pixel, we uh, first create like some, maybe instead of just doing a puts there a Ruby logger, we can maybe record something on the database first and then send a file. That's happening on the server side. But at the same time, you can have something on the client side as well, which is the iframe. The iframe, actually, you can see that it was a console.log. So you can do a console log there. So instead maybe of a console log, you can start saving stuff into a window variable, or maybe into local storage, or into a cookie. And then maybe later on, like after a minute or so, or every minute, you have something like a thread that wakes up and then sends the whole tracker information into the server so that you can be persistent. Or you don't even have to do that. You can just persist it on local storage and then do something about it.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Cool. So if no question, then we move to the next talk.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Tristan. So, Jimmy, are you there?
Yeah.
Or
Yes,
yeah?
sir. Can you hear me?
Do you want to start with yours talk, or I start mine? It's okay.
Can I do mine first?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, guys, because I have to hop off after this.
Cool. Yep.
Cool. This is my first time presenting over the line. Hopefully everything works out. And yeah. Okay, let me just set my. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Everything good?
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. So hang on. How many? Well, I guess I need to go back. Wait, I was gonna ask, how many of you are Ruby developers and how many of you are JavaScript developers in the house? Ruby developers?
We have 3.
JavaScript developers?
One.
One JavaScript developers.
Oh.
So we so the Penang community is out, like Ruby has taken
More.
over.
For now.
For now. And the rest of you, I see other people as well. Are you guys other developers, Go developers, PHP developers?
Oh, they just join in to see what's going on.
All right, cool. Nice to see you guys. I would definitely want to join you guys one of these days, you know. Okay, so without further ado, I guess this talk is about Hyperloop. And I presented this talk last week in the KL Ruby Brigade, KL Ruby Meetup. So sorry if you have already heard this, but yeah, if not, then yes. So basically, this is a perfect meetup to present this, since Hyperloop is actually a framework for writing React app in Ruby. So if you have not heard about it before and you are in this Ruby meetup, Ruby plus JS meetup, then yeah, I guess this is perfect for you. So I'm Jimmy. I'm an engineering team lead at Rapid River. And I usually host the KL Ruby Brigade meetup. And I used to organize RubyConf, not anymore. And yes, we definitely are always looking for more people to join the Ruby community. So yes, please, if you guys are interested in building the community, which is all what open source is all about, talk to GUI after this and grow the community in Penang. So what is Hyperloop? Have you guys heard of Hyperloop? React RB before? Any of you heard of React RB before? I guess I need to move back and forth my screen to see you guys. I can't see you anyways. Anyways, it's React RB. Before this, they changed to Hyperloop, and it's a full stack web tooling for single page applications. So it's just a fancy way to say that it has like a built-in framework, like scaffolding to build like single page apps. In this case, it's a React single page app. So it is coined as the complete isomorphic Ruby framework. So basically, isomorphic means you can use the same code both server side and client side. So yeah, you can basically do that with Hyperloop. and it will soon be renamed to Hyperstack. So, and one of the reasons, I guess, is to not confuse themselves with this guy, because if you Google Hyperloop, this is all it shows up. It does not show up the Ruby Hyperloop. So probably that's the reason why they are changing this over. Maybe, I don't know, but I guess it's as good as yours. So let's get into the compositions or the building blocks of the Hyperloop framework. So in Hyperloop, you have 5 different objects. So the components objects will be similar to like a React component object, which I will show you later. So basically, this is where you define all the HTML DOMs, the event what do you call this, the event handlers and everything. Of course, if you're familiar with React, this is really almost the same way you would write a React component. Then the next will be what is called operations. So operations is what's it's an object that encapsulates business logic. So basically, you can think about them as like a controller or maybe some feature classes or something like that. So it just helps to basically define the operations of your app. Of course, it has more than just DSL for you to write stuff. The DSL actually helps to do a lot of things, like, for example, handling the promises that the previous step gives, and basically it allows you to handle like failures and success conditions quite easily. The next thing would be the models. So you will have actually we will be using active record models in this case. So Hyperloop models is actually active record models that this has just been moved to the Hyperloop folder. So in the demo later, you will see that we don't really need to do anything other than just create the model and move it over to the Hyperloop folder to activate this. You can think of it as exposing this to your front-end app in a way. And this is truly isomorphic. You don't really need to do anything extra just to write. You're just using the same file. Policies is something that is built into Hyperloop. So you can think of it like a authorization framework. So it has a DSL you can use to define the operation parameters of all your models. So imagine that you can define things like, can a user with admin level edit certain objects, or otherwise they can only read, or they can only list out in an index. So kind of like Pundit. So this is what the policies give you out of the box. Stores are basically like React stores. So you can think of it as like a Redux store. And it is basically a Flux store under the hood. So everything you can do with the Flux store, you can do it with the Hyperloop store. And again, yeah, it's super easy to set up. It is super easy to define, and yeah, which I'll show you later. So this is like a diagram of what each component does and where it sits on the client and the server side. So the client side, you will see that the components and the store will reside solely on the client side. The components and the store will basically be transpiled into JavaScript. That's basically it, and it will turn itself into a React component, and it will live in the client side. Operations and models, as you can see, it spans between client and model. So these two things are isomorphic in a way that you can define this in Ruby, and you can use the same operation in Ruby and in React. And the policies themselves deals with the the authorization layer of the models. So it sits on the server side and it gets handled on the server request. And everything sits on top of Rails. In this case, this is a diagram for Hyperloop Rails. If you decide to use Hyperloop on top of Rails, you can use Hyperloop on top of anything, other frameworks other than Rails. You just need to do some extra scaffolding, but nothing can stop you from using Hyperloop with, say, I don't know, like, sorry?
Sinatra.
Yeah, Sinatra or anything like that. So right now I'm showing you the demo. Later on, it will be a demo on Hyperloop Rails. Any questions so far?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, cool.
Sorry, how about C#?
Sorry?
C#. Can it work with C#?
Can it work with C#? I don't think that it works with C#. The whole gem is written in Ruby. So I'm not sure how you plan to use this with C#.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe later it will be more clear how it works. So let me show you some code examples of each of these objects. So if you look at Hyperloop component, at the top here, you see the example of a React component. Oh, wait. How come my mouse cannot show up at all? Never mind. So at the top here, you see the React component written in JavaScript. And you can see that this very basic, simple example of UL with a whole bunch of LIs, which list out all the books and the book's name. At the bottom here, you can see the equivalent written in Hyperloop component. Hyperloop component class is just any class that you can just have a render function that you extend that you inherit from the Hyperloop component class. And you can see that there's a built-in DSL function called render. And you can pass in a root element inside the render. In our case here is the UL. And you can use plain Ruby code here. You can see here book.all.each is basically the Ruby function to query all the books from the database and do each. And there's a block here which just defines the loop. And underneath the loop, inside the loop, you will see the LI, and it will have a click function for it that if you click on add book name, then it will call a function called add book to basket. So basically, this is like a shopping cart basket thingy for books. So yeah, then basically you can have if else just like how you do in Ruby anyways, like acting user basket include book. If the basket includes the book already, then you don't show this LI at all. So this is basically how you define a React component in Ruby Hyperloop. Operations is also very simple. You can just define any class and you inherit from Hyperloop operations, and it gives you a few DSLs to work with. The params DSL will basically define what parameters you can pass into this operation. So in this case, we will be able to pass in a book type param called book. So basically, when you call upon this function, it will run steps defined at the bottom. Here we see one step defined, but you can define multiple steps after this as well. And you can see that the steps is just plain Ruby. You can call anything here. In this case, we are calling return if acting user watch list include the book. So what is this? This is add to acting user's watch list. So what this function does is that it adds a book into a user's watch list. So obviously, if the book is already in the list, you don't want to do anything. So hence you do return if acting user, which is the active user right now, the watch list includes the book, and then watch list mailer dot new book email. So this is basically just calling the function new book email that you pass it another param, which is watchlist.create. This is just for the benefit of, this is for benefit of I guess, you guys who haven't seen Ruby code before, that basically, let me see if I can find my cursor. Maybe this is better. What is this? Good slide. Slide. Can you guys see?
Yep.
Okay. Right. So this function is you can see that this is as a slasher. So basically, it indicates that this is actually the same line. This watchlist.create creates a watch list in the database that accepts the user and the book parameter. So basically, this function will return you a watch list object, which then is passed as a parameter into the new book email function. So the watch list mailer is probably a mailer that emails the user the book that they have just added into their watch list, and the email watch list mailer function new book email accepts the watch list as a parameter. Yeah, just for the benefit of those that don't know Ruby. So this is just an operation, but you can define step by step. So you can define next step, which will only occur or run if the first step is done. So if there's any error happen here, it will run the second step. So using this, you can easily set up like failure cases and failure conditions that you will not run anything if there's any error, you don't want to send email, or if there's error, you want to send some alert email or something like that. So this is how you can define the steps. Next would be the model. Hyperloop model is just, in this case, in Ruby, in Hyperloop Rails, is just you can use the application record. Just change it to Hyperloop. You can just use the application record and put it inside the Hyperloop folder, which I'll show you later. So just vanilla Rails model, and straight away you can already use this inside the component. We see earlier that this is already used in the earlier example where book.each.something. In this case, we are using book.inCatalog, which is a scope defined in the application record. And this scope is just saying that the book where the catalog is true. So in this is pure Ruby active record. So that you can just use in any way you want inside the component. So yeah, you already have like a two-way binding for the database record and also the display this way. Policy, if you are familiar with Pandit, so policy is kind of how you define different operation parameters on models. So in this case, we can define the policy for books, and the policy is that you can only allow change allow create and update if, let's say, the user is an admin. So this is how you define the policy. And operation policy as well, you can say that you can only invoke this on a server if this is an acting user, or if let's say there's a logged in user, you can invoke this. No, basically, if there's an acting user, only then you execute this on the server. So basically, that's the parameters of executing any operation. So you can define policy for both the models and the operation. Last but not least, this is just a store, and this is the way you can share states between components. So components, you can define states on your within the component itself. But say, for example, if you want to share it across different components, most likely you're going to use a global store, shared store. Sorry, and this is how you do it in Hyperloop. You can just define a class and inherit the Hyperloop store, and you can just define the state of the store. So in this case, this store have a state called discount, and it's scoped to the class, and it has an automatically defined reader. So once you do this, you can straight away do discounter dot discount, and we'll give you 30. And you can also mutate it by calling dot mutate discount, and it will discount and it will update the discount state value. And also you can define functions like a model that you can just create some helper functions. Say, for example, lucky dip means that the discount will you will change your discount like between +5 or -5. So once you call this function, it will take this discount plus within this range randomly. So you can define functions like this. Yep. Okay. So let's look at the demo. So what I have here is an app that I have. It's a Rails app that I have basically run a few things. Let me show you what it is. Wait. Ooh. Interesting. What is this? I have never seen this before.
Your Git
What
app.
is that?
Huh? What's that?
No, you can just do a git log,
Yeah, but I want to see the changes.
If you're on GitHub, you can also see the commit history there.
True. Yeah, let's see this. If you are interested as well, you can go to my GitHub, Jimmy NGUYC. And the repo is called Hyperloop Rails to Do Mvc. Yeah, I'm just gonna go through the commits just to save us some time. So I have just started with a clean Rails app. I did Rails. So you can see that the gem file here doesn't have the Hyperloop yet. Yeah, okay. So I just have a vanilla Rails app spin up from scratch. The next thing I did was I installed the Hyperloop gem. You just put it in the gem file. You run bundle install. And after that, I run Rails G install Hyperloop. This is the command to initialize a few things in the Rails app. It adds a few lines of stuff in application.js. It adds this default Hyperloop mount in the routes. And that's it, I think. Then there's a few things. Sorry, there's a new few files generated as well. There's a file called policies, application policies, which defines the Hyperloop policies. Is in app policies. And the last thing is the initializer file for Hyperloop that looks like this. So Rails G install Hyperloop will give you all this. Then you do. Then what I did after this is I install hot reload. So there's a gem called Opal hot reload, hot reloader. So that sets up hot reload for development purposes, so that you don't need to hit refresh every time we change the component. And I added foreman as well to just make things easier to spin up, because I need to spin up the hot reloader and also the web together. So whenever I do development, this is what I do. I spin up the hot reloader. And I have to define which folder to watch. So in this case, I'm watching the app Hyperloop folder. And I'm just spinning up Rails. There's a few things you need to do to enable hot reloader. So that's here. You need to define the port that is listening. By default, running bundle exec opal hot reloader. Set opal hot reloader will run the hot reloader in port 25222. And yeah, and the last thing is that I will basically add this into the Hyperloop configuration so that it gets bundled together in the compiled JavaScript. So at this point, I have basically the hello world working as far as I remember. So if I do foreman, so here you can see that I'm starting web, I'm starting hot reloader, and here, let me see my routes. This is old cache. Oh, I have not defined anything yet. Sorry. So I have not defined any components yet. Yeah, I have not defined any components yet, but it's quite easy to define components. So, so you can do Rails G Hyperloop component. Maybe we can just call it hello world for now. And wait, oh sorry, hyper component. That's it. All it does is that it creates a new file in the component folder, hello world, with a whole bunch of default default stuff. And you might be familiar with this. This is basically React lifecycle stuff. So you have before, after mount, before and after. Before unmount and before update, which we don't need right now. And we can just do in our, maybe we can just do root to Hyperloop hello. I think it's hello. And should give me it takes some time for the first boot because it's compiling everything. And you can see that this is how easy it is to create a React component. This is definitely a React component, as you can see here. So yeah, it gives you a whole bunch of scaffolding tools like that. So let me just set it. Wait. Now, the next thing I did is stop the to-do list. Any of you heard of To-Do MVC? No? To-Do MVC? Okay, now I can see your faces. So To-Do MVC, if you go to todomvc.com, it's a project created to benchmark, in a way, the development experience of different frameworks, different JavaScript framework in this case. So the idea is that you have to build a to-do list with a certain set of features using different frameworks, and you can compare how's the development experience. And it has already a few examples done in many different frameworks. You can find Vue, you can find like React, Backbone, Angular, Ember. Every major framework you can see an example of this To-Do MVC. So yeah, so this is a way to benchmark development experiences in a way. So what I did is, this is what it looks like To-Do MVC. Where's To-Do MVC? Maybe I can just spin it up. So this is the one. Right. So Hyperloop to-do list. I'm going to restart. Agui, what's the time limit for the talk?
I think you can take like 5 more minutes or 10 minutes max.
Okay. I'll go fast then.
Yep.
So, hang on a sec. It's called template. Okay, I'll show you this and I'll show you the rest quickly. So this is a to-do list template. This is pure HTML, and you can see that the To-Do MVC already handles a bunch of CSS and all this thing. So all you need to do is implement a design and the logic that goes with it. So I will try. My goal is to try to turn this, which is nothing, into this. Okay, so let's just move ahead to my solution. Yeah, and probably this is the fastest way we can see everything. Just let me rebuild it. Now the thing is, I'm doing a whole bunch of file changes by checking out. So usually you don't need to do restart every time, but I ran into a couple of problems where it doesn't bundle or reload properly. So just for safety, I did this. But usually when you do development, you don't really need to do restart it. So this is the completed app. You can see that there's all full the CRUD features here. So so this is all powered by the database. This is all connected, and you can see that if I do something new, item 3 here, it will update. So basically, underneath it's using action cable to monitor changes and push it to the client. So you can see that everything will be pushed as long as there's an open connection. Then you can see things like this is the click action with React route. So this is not a page reload. This is a React route. What else? This is delete. This is edit. And yeah, we've covered all the CRUD operations and the filtering, and with like so like create complete. Then this is it. So this is the completed app. Let me show you the code. From the routes, you can see that I have, well, this is no longer needed actually. And I'm piping everything into this component. So this is just a wildcard to capture everything, to just show the component. This is just so that I can, achieve this. So if let's say I come back here, it will still work, because although I'm using I'm using React routes here, obviously, obviously active only have this, and if I don't handle this, this will be 404, right? So that's why I have this, and everything just pipes to the to-do list. Now let's go to the to-do list, and this looks a bit better in a way that it's more easily readable, structured. You can see there's a header, there's a footer, and in the middle here, there's a bunch of routes. So this is, if you're familiar with React routes, this is how you define routes. You tell it what routes and what component it needs to render. So in this case, the root route just renders the list, and any other route with something will also render the list, but the parameter will be saved as scope. So let's look at list. List is like this. So we have a section main, but by the way, this is all copied and migrated over from the HTML that I've downloaded earlier from To Do Mvc. So you can see that there's an input at the top, and there's a UL which lists out all my to-do items. In this case, each of the to-do items will render this. This is also a component here. Of course, there's nothing to stop you from doing this. This always you can always do it everything here. But yeah, this is how I did it, and I've done it here. So you can see that there's a couple of actions that has been added to the checkbox. So if you click on the checkbox, it will mark the item as either completed or not completed. If you double click it, it will show the editing text box. If you click on the destroy, it will call the items.destroy. By the way, this is just the same way you can call active record model items. And yeah, the rest are just, there's another edit item component here that I just defined together with this. You can obviously put this in a different class. The header, again, is just input field with on key press. If I press enter, it will run this create new to-do operation. So what is this operation? You can go to components, Hyperloop operations, create new to-do op. Step 1, create to-do. Basically, this is just calling the database change. And the second thing is to change the title to empty. So whenever I change something here, I want it to clear out. And I'm using this to-do store to do it. So since I need to control the component by something else, I'm doing this through the store. Because the component is just reading the store value. You can see here, the component reads the to-do store title value. And as long as as long as I mutate this anywhere in the app, it will be updated. Sorry, not this one. It will be updated there on the component. That's how I clear it. There are other operations like clear completed. So in this case, you can also just simply call post to any path here. In this case, if you look at the post path here, it calls clear completed. I have a special controller here that handles server ops to call clear complete. So what is clear complete? So first of all, what is to do? So to do is just active record model. The only difference is that the Hyperloop model, you put it in app Hyperloop model. The normal Rails model, you put it in app models, right? So that's the only difference. And both Rails and the Hyperloop can share the code. Now, you can see here, I've defined a class method called clear completed, which calls completed destroy all. Unfortunately, you can't do destroy all using the client because with the data binding, each of these is bound to like an action for one of these items. So it doesn't trigger the clear all if, let's say, you call it this way, and it doesn't allow you to call the CRUD on more than one object, like a collection. So that's just a caveat for you. If you need to do something like this, you have to do it on the server side. But it's easy. You just need to issue like a post request, and you can see that this is easily handled. If there's a failure, you can just put a fail step here, and you can just alert it out. This is just a JavaScript alert. The last thing I'll just talk about is the edit. So edit here, you have step 1, just to call the edit update function. The next step is to mutate the editing state of the component to false. So again, step 2 will not run unless step 1 is completed. So you can ensure that nothing goes wrong here, even though if this step is failed. It will still behave the same way as you intended it to. So yeah, that's about it. I think I don't have any Hyperloop policies written for this app, but yeah, I guess you can also just play around yourself. So last thing I want to talk about is just as a summary. I guess if you are very interested in this, then great, go ahead, because it's super easy to pick up. There's tons of tutorial in the website. There's tons of documentations on the website. There's a lot of sample apps you can download and take a look at. So definitely very easy to learn. And everything we just saw is all Ruby. So we can write in one language only, front end and back end, obviously. I think that's a plus here. The operations and model are isomorphic, like I mentioned, so that you only need to write once, and you will handle both server and client side. And it has out of the box authentication and server side rendering, and it has a very active group of contributors that is currently still working on it. So yeah, that's what I think is good about Hyperloop. Why not to use Hyperloop? I think it's still in a very early stage, not as in like the age of this gem. This project has been there for almost like 6-7 years already, but the adoption is quite low, probably because maybe people like to work directly with JavaScript, React, and not go through another transpiling layer. But yeah, it's fairly new in adoption, and it's very low in adoption. So if you run into any problems, you cannot find the solution in Stack Overflow. So you have to kind of follow within the parameters, like what the README and the documentation provides. So if you want to go a bit more adventurous, you kind of need to start looking at the code. And obviously, there's framework lock-in. You cannot use the same code, Hyperloop, to port it over anywhere else. There's no easy porting if you decide to leave Hyperloop. So you have to write everything again. Also similar reason for the point number 1 is that if you want to fully utilize the power of React, you will need to learn React. And therefore, to fully utilize the power of Hyperloop or Hyperstack, you will need to learn React anyways. And therefore, I think that's the reason why people just prefer to write React. But you can see the benefit as well in writing in Hyperloop, because you can see the code structure. Everything is so clean and everything is using Ruby. You can use blocks, you can use all the good stuff that Ruby provides you. And obviously, there's another extra layer of transpiling from Ruby to Jest. So when you're doing development, obviously, everything happens in real time. It's a bit slower that way. But in production, obviously, you're just compiling it when you deploy the project. That's not a big deal there. And I feel like there's still some bugs left in the system. Like I'm sure they are still actively fixing it. But yeah, because of the low adoption, because of the low, not a lot of people for support from the community, so bugs tend to get like longer to get fixed. Of course, if you decide to, help out with the project, that's definitely something, I would recommend. So yeah, if you are interested to see more and learn more, just go to rubyhyperloop.org and hyperstack.org. Those are the only two resources you can find out there. There's nothing else out there. So find those two, and then all the resources are there for you to get up to speed. And that's it. Thanks. Any questions?
Any questions for Hyperloop? Any questions? No?
I have a question.
Yep.
What are the typical use cases where you would use this framework? Like what kind of websites? Obviously a to-do list, but what else?
I think the best use case for React or Hyperloop or any of those JavaScript framework is single page applications. So not a normal like admin page style application, but maybe a very highly interactive app that requires like a lot of real time. You want to minimize load, page load, and therefore you want to use single page. Yeah, typically it's not typical use case for like per se for Hyperloop, but it's like for React applications in this case. So single page app is perfect for React is perfect for building single page applications. Obviously, you can also build small components that you can just plug into your existing website. So imagine you can just write the to-do list as a component. You can bundle it and you can insert it into the website anywhere, existing website. You don't need to write a single page app to do that. But again, that's like a React feature, but not like a Hyperloop feature.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
So okay. Thank you, Jimmy. So from the floor, so we still have time. There's two types of options right now. One is that we carry on with some of the interviews, and it's more on a Q&A style of continuing this session, or we move on to another topic, which I have in previous RubyConf. I present a BDD with Cucumber. So depends whether you want to go forward with a talk or more towards a Q&A session where all the developers is there and you can ask any questions. It's more on the interactive, whatever questions. And if you don't have a question, then we have a panel there to guide us through some questions. Do you prefer that interactive or another talk? Yep. Or go by votes. So who agree with another talk?
Interested in testing.
Okay.
Testing.
Testing?
Yeah.
So 2 on testing. Anyone? Abstain? No?
Testing.
Okay. So we move on to topic. Let's see. So next one. So this
Okay, I'm gonna drop off. Bye guys. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye. How to present this
You
one,
have to
right?
share your screen, yeah.
Screen share. Yeah. Okay. So let me go. Let me view present. Is it working? Working. Okay. Do you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So today my topic will be on BDD with Cucumber. So I'm Gui. I'm an ex-software engineer from Onet, so that's where I picked up Cucumber. I'm currently working in different company right now. I'm working in Functionize and Pconnects. I still work with Python, Java, not Lua anymore. It's Nginx and Ruby during my free time. So yeah, yeah. So this is the previous one, never mind. So what is BDD? And introduction to Cucumber, and then we go through like ONAP, how ONAP use Cucumber. So what is BDD? So BDD came from another methodology, TDD and ATDD, test-driven development, and what's that already? But ATDD. Let me see, acceptance test-driven development. So this is the methodology for acceptance test-driven development. You have customer development testing, where it's your test is mostly focused on acceptance tests, right? So more on the business use case, class requirement, test-driven development. So this is the process. Okay, so first you write a unit test, and you run the unit test. You make sure the unit test fail at first. If it pass, means that's not a test. It doesn't work, right? Make sure it's fail, and then you write the code to make it pass. Make the code pass, and then you refactor to make things cleaner. Because your code might be just make sure it pass. You don't care the style or whatever. So you refactor and make it pretty, and you repeat the process again. So this is test-driven development. So BDD tactics. So you should have a user story, the behavior that contributes the most, and describe those in a single notation. So user story, normally you have for the program managers, for the feature designers, you have user, like how the user will use your features, right? So you write down in plain text when the user goes through this page, what it clicks, what should it see, the flow, and then the behavior that contribute the most. So you only want the things that important. You don't implement things that fancy stuff. You want to see things that flying around. No, things that really matters. So you focus on those. You write the test for those, right? And then describe in single notation, because people want to get things simplified. So if you go through a full paragraph, not full paragraph, a full article describing what you want to do in the test, it doesn't make sense, because you are throwing too many things to the developers, for testers. So describe it in simple, straightforward things that what you want, right? And applying to the lowest level abstraction. Behavior-driven development. So as the how to say, BDD terms, business focus on business requirements, stories, user actions, rather than what is your technology. Is it inside a loop, or is it related to which payment to use? You don't care. You just want things that works with the business goal, right? Make things work. Help to architecture the features, and for documentation wise, because if you have your test cases, that's also your documentation. How should your system work in that particular feature? So if you go back and ask your developer, when I click this, what should happen? No one knows, because there might be a lot of code jumping all around places to know what is happening. If you have a test, you know exactly what should happen, and then you easily tell your support or customer easily, because it's in your test. It should behave in a certain way, right? So BDD started by this guy. At first, it's called specification by example. So this process primarily consists of two activities. First is the specification workshop, the three amigos. Let me see. A product manager, the developers, and the testers. So these three people are those who will draft the specification. So the project manager will be the one that brings in business specification, the business goals that you need to achieve in terms of customer, how the customer should feel when they use this product, what is the feature the customer wants. The developers will think of what is the strategy to draft the features and also the technologies that's suitable for this. The tester will, in the other hand, will give some ideas and also inputs on how to test the stuff, or whether this is a viable things to actually work. So like, how to say? So if you want to test things that very high scale, so not very high scale.
User experience.
Yeah, user experience more towards product manager. Tester will be more on the technical part, where how to test the certain things to make sure everything is in place. But tester will give inputs on the specification workshop. And next activities is example mapping. So this is the activities when you do this example mapping. First, you create a story, then you create a rule, an example. So how do you make sure this sticky notes, right? So you basically write down things that you think that's important for the business, and then you stick in categories, which one goes to where, right? And then questions on the right hand side. So for this, you can visit the link Pickles Pro example mapping. Can Google for that. There will be more description on that, right? Example mapping. Scenario versus acceptance criteria. So the scenario is an example of the system behavior from one or more user perspective. Acceptance criteria are sets of rules. So one is example, one is the rules that covers aspect of the system behavior. Okay. Next, we'll, in terms of deciding which feature to go, you have a Roman voting. So it's kind of a style where people vote for certain features, yes or no, right? So to abstain, you just put either way. If you don't agree, then down. Then you need to further, how to say, you need to get a majority votes from this. If you find people disagree with it, you need to convince him, or else you will repeat the cycle until you get a majority vote for the specification to move forward, because you don't want to build things that a lot of people doesn't like it. So you need to get majority buy-in, right? That's why you have a specification workshop, right?
Question.
Yep.
Buy-in from whom?
Buy-in from the project manager, the developers, and the testers. Yep. So so outside in development. So for doing specification, this is one of the way. Outside in means you go for the flow. That's typically for programmers. So you let the user to explain it in terms of the behavior, the flow of the feature, and then programmers will look at it and how to design it to work exactly to fit the flow, right? So you put timers for 1 hour, 20 minutes, and it do this. Okay, so now we move on to Cucumber. So this is the part that I'm more experienced with. I work in for Cucumber on Cucumber particular for 3 years. So what is Cucumber? So it's for BDD, behavior-driven development. It's written in Ruby. It's using Gherkin. Gherkin is a syntax or a language that's specifically for Cucumber. it doesn't work anywhere. Okay, and commonly used for design, documentation, regression. So if you want to design a feature, you draw out certain sets of tests. We call not tests, it's more on the story. And also documentation, what's behavior it should work, and then regression. Once your app or your program getting larger, you rely on this sets of Cucumber scenarios to make sure your app doesn't go unexpected, like haywire. So it should work as it should before you make any upgrades or changes, right? So again, Cucumber is not a testing tool. So people are like confused. Cucumber, is it a testing tool? Testing tool is like RSpec. RSpec is a testing tool. Cucumber is more towards designing feature. For you to design feature that you want, remove the barrier where you have a lot of discussion back and forth. I don't want this, I want this, I don't want this. And then in the end, you drag a lot of time to finish a product. So this is a framework or tool for you to lay out what is the agreed feature that this team should work on, right? Rather than, okay, back and forth. I built this, I don't like this, it doesn't work, I didn't test, scrap it, redo. So this will make sure everyone stays in the same page, everyone agrees with it. It's more on the story. So this is getting from creator of Cucumber. So Cucumber was born out of frustration with ambiguous requirements and misunderstanding between people who order the software and who deliver it, right? So
Cucumber is not just for Ruby, it can be used for any.
Yeah, it can be used for any platform because it's just a tool to test your endpoint. So it can work anywhere, right? So what is Gherkin? So it's a business readable, domain specific language and able to express feature in the natural language. It uses these 3 keywords: given, when, and then, right? So it's also available in 60 language. So you can write in Malay, you can write in Japanese, whatever language you want, it works, right? So from here, you can see it's in BM. If it's an N, it will be done. If the background, it will call latar belakang, or yeah. And then that's the Malay version of it. So this is the feature file for Cucumber. So first you write a feature, then you describe the feature. What does this feature do? Then you write the scenario. Also the description, the scenario description. So given that a user open the website google.com, when he types timer for 1 hour and he presses the button search, then he able to use the timer, he able to see the timer, and the timer is counting down from 1 hour. So you can see that 3 keywords: given, when, and then. So given is a baseline. So it's like the setup for the environment for the user to go in. So when is the user action? And then is the response, right? So from here, it's more towards business. So given certain things, when the user do certain things, it should give certain response. So it's very user story-like, and it works when you run it, right? So feature will have a bigger pictures on what this feature does. Scenario will have test case behavior. So this is the explanation on the keyword scenario. Given, set up precondition, when, perform action, then is verifying outcome. Okay. So this is a sample feature file. It's the same thing. You have a background right now. So this is another keyword called background. So background, it's a setup where every scenario, it will reset itself to the background. So let's say you need to open a browser every time before a user will need to click, right? You don't want to repeatedly specifying inside given, right? You want it to be there when you start doing your scenario. So you do it in your background. So setting up states condition before any scenario runs. It also runs in the before hooks. Okay, so the red color, So this is the fun part. So you know what's Gherkin, right? Gherkin is more English readable storyline, right? So on the left-hand side, right-hand side is actually the parsing of the text that you wrote. You can see it's using a regex. So given that entity name, then you do certain things. So this is what we call a step definition. So a given is actually a step. So like step 1, step 2, step 3, right? Given is a step where you define it, how you want to use that step, what information you want to get from that step. I want to get the entity out of that step. I want to get the name out of that step. What I want to do with it. I want to load from a fixture, load from the predefined entity that I already push it into database or do things like that. And then I create entity. This is all the Ruby functions that you want to call when you do a step definition, right? So this is an additional glossary for Cucumber. So that's hook. So for hook, you can tell Cucumber to do certain things before a test to run, not the test, before Cucumber run, or after Cucumber finish. So basically, if like the Cucumber is finished, right, you want to tear down the whole database after the test is finished running, you can do that in the after hooks. Or the before hooks, you want to initialize some data, you want to push in some fake data, you can do that also, right? So something like tag hooks. So in Ruby, there's a tagging. We use add. So we can use tagging to run certain functions, right? Maintainable Cucumber. So this is the structures that we use. First, we have feature files. All the feature files is just like that. You remember when a user opened the browser, something like that, right? That's all the feature files, all the stories that you want to write. You put it in the folder. Next is the step definition. The step definition is the one that you regex the steps and do actions. Helpers. Helpers are the Ruby methods that links to your backend. So you abstract that out of the step definition. So there's 3 layers. First, you have the feature files where it's written by anyone in the product team. You can let anyone to design the features. You let them write it in any language, it will work. Step definition is the one who communicate between the helpers and the feature files. What does that step means? What information you want to extract from it and carry out what task, right? So you can have when user Adam clicks button. So clicks is an action. You can generalize it. Rather than click, you can do hover over or whatever. So that action will actually give a different output. It will trigger different helpers. So step definition says if action equals to click, trigger do click. Else, if hover, do hover. So all these do clicks or do hover will be in helpers, where those functions or definition will actually triggers the methods in your backend or in your actual product. And fixtures is all the data model stuff and hooks and configuration. So keep your step definition clean. So use a helper class or variables. Put everything in your step definition because somebody just doesn't want to have another extra layer called helpers. It just throw everything in the step definition. In the end, we'll have a very long step definition where it's very hard to read and very hard to refactor if you have more scenario coming in. Step calling other steps. So it's like you have a given step and a when step, right? Your given step can actually call other steps also to save your time, but it will deprecate soon, so don't use it. There's a shortcut for this. There's a YouTube channel, YouTube video about this down there. So how we make use of Cucumber in on app. So we draft user story according to Gherkin. So the product manager will write his story, the feature story, according to that format, given when, then. And then write scenario before and during development, run Cucumber against development branch, and build in build server, and regression checks afterwards. So we still use the same Cucumber framework to check against whatever we add in. So if we add a new feature on it, that will serve as a regression check to make sure the behavior actually works correctly. So my experience is on Cucumber, the painful part of using Cucumber is the convention. So in different teams have different convention of writing things, organizing stuff. So for new joiners, they need to learn how to do it in certain way. So it's very hard to get into the same mindset to write the correct style, so that the project in the company can actually grow and expandable. Because if you just don't care about convention, you add whatever, you write whatever, then it's very hard for people to change when new feature is coming up, right? And maintenance is also a painful part. So what is a good part? Documentation. You don't have to write a separate documentation on all your features, the behavior of your app. Everything is there in user story. The feature file is in the in actually behavior step by step, right? And also regression. So why should you use it? If you want to brainstorm a new feature, do it. Use Cucumber. Or if you're constantly hitting problem and conflicts using development across team, or you just need a single point of truth. If you work in a software world, right, you know everywhere have a documentation and different versions are different things. So some are true, some are not, some are outdated, some are updated. It's like, what are you doing? Where should I find the correct place to how this behave? We also have this issue back in our company. So the single point of truth is actually Cucumber. Because we run our regression test, it should behave exactly like that. If you read other documentation, it's actually like outdated because it's not following. It's just people writing it. It's not really up to date, right? And you do not need to update documentation of all features, right? Because it's on live with your development. So anything change will be on Cucumber itself. You don't have to just update your documentation. So why Cucumber? Probably not for you. If you have a simple feature with a clear instruction, you don't want to add more burden writing these 3 layers: your feature file, your step definition, and then the helpers to just do your thing, right? Or designing feature that doesn't involve everyone. These parties, if it's not involve them, it's just product owner and developers, then maybe it's not a good tool because it's easy for communication. You don't need to have Cucumber in the middle, right, to handle the communication. Or just a testing framework. If you want a testing framework, there's RSpec, there's other framework that's out there, right? Company that uses Cucumber, PayPal, Groupon, that one is Amazon, right? Yeah, Typeform. So this is the events for Cucumber. Cucumber is very hot in London, so a lot of Cucumber developers, they call themselves developers, yeah. They actually write stories for testings or business requirements back in London, because there's big companies, their business always changes. So they need to have a clear feature to jot it down, to discuss. If you want to change, you just change that feature file before going to the step definition to the coding part. So make things finalized in the feature file before you move on. That's also a good separation, because normally when you do testing, right, I want to test this, then you start coding halfway. No, I don't want to do this anymore. Scrap it, everything. Like what? So feature file allows you to have discussion with all the stakeholders to make sure everything is finalized before moving on to the development, right? So those are references that you can use. Agile, PDD, and also the Cucumber, Ruby. So slides are on there. The cat photos are here. And this email doesn't work anymore. Okay, that's it. Any question about PDD?
How would you share the feature files with project managers?
Yep.
Tend to not be technical people.
Correct.
So how do you share it with them? How do you have a shareable platform? What kind of shareable platform?
So for us, we use Google Docs. So you need to train them to understand what those 3 keywords are, right? Given, when, and then. Let them fit into their minds. If they want to write a story, they need to use these 3 keywords. So when they start to write features, then they'll understand, oh, I need to write this format. And then once it writes that format, we can just put into Cucumber, and then we can write the stories. It will fail at first, then we'll build it on based on that story. Because if any requirement change, we'll refer back to that. You say you want this is finalized, that's why we start to build. Because if nothing is finalized, your requirement always change, your project never ends. Yeah, so you need somewhere more finalized. So we discuss to get down all the behavior. So you said you want this behavior, we agreed on it, that's why we work on it. So this is the evidence that you put into documentation also. Yeah, this is behavior.
Do you review through the stories after the first Google Docs?
Yeah, we need to review through the story, yeah.
Then you write it as the...
We need to write down the specs, so the developer will have how we call a feature design doc. So we need to design what framework we want to use, what code, what add-on, how we want to change our code base. We need to write it down and then get reviewed by all the people also. Yeah. Yep. Correct. But first, we need to get down to the story. The story and the behavior must be finalized. That's the most important thing. Yeah. If you have any question about doubt about behaviors, you can make it clearer. You can ask them to add more scenarios anytime, so it's more clear.
I have a question.
Yep.
Do you need to use RSpec or Minitest or something else alongside with this, or this includes the testing environment as well?
You can integrate with RSpec. Remember the helper class?
Yeah.
The helper class, you can link to the RSpec if you want to. So it depends on the use case of the company. For purists, just now, they say it's not a testing tool, but in real world, if you want to use it, no one stops you to do it. You can just hook it to Minitest or RSpec. And so that when your story runs, it actually triggers the RSpec to make sure things work.
But if you don't use RSpec or Minitest,
yeah, you still can work on it. It still works.
Does it test my application or no?
It will test your application. Let me open my GitHub. I actually have an example. Let me search. Where's my repository? So this is the how to start from fresh. So if you don't know Cucumber, it's okay. You can do it like this. So it's a very simple project. So you have sample features, step definition, and helpers. Okay, so let's see what's in the sample features. So something like this. So scenario, create a web blog. So given that the website is up, so I make sure the website is up, right? And then I create a web blog with the following details: the title, description, and then verify. So then the web blog should be created, and web blog should contain this thing. Okay. So now we go and find what is actually the step that's doing that given. So given that the website is up, I run verify website. And then I check the response code. Yeah. And then where is this verify website? Is in common helpers. So you have another layer of abstraction where all your functions can be in here. So you have a separate developers working on this. It's okay to talk to each other. And then you have, you can do it as an API, So, okay, to verify a website, I don't care what you do. I just call verify website, it should verify website. So the code here can change anytime because it's a separate layer, right? And then you have create. So it's a URL, then you do a response. So it doesn't use aspect. It's just pure Ruby running. And then let's see back. It's that definition when. So yes. So it depends how you want to format it. Normally we do this. The comment when, the comment then, and comment given. Yeah, all this we normally separate. So you can make it more specialized into your objects. So you have a user folder for the user given, or you have a book or a product folder for more organized way of writing it so that you don't throw everything in it, right? And then, yeah, when I create the following details, then I parse it in the JSON, and then I trigger a create from the common helpers, and then I'll get the entity. I store it in my session. So later I will use it in my common then. Then the website should be created. Remember just now we create an entity already, right? You store in that particular test so you can verify whether the ID is there. It's not there, it means it's not created. And the website should contain, then you parse the string that you're verify. There's a JSON. Then you compare the entity with string that you define in your feature file. Right. This is a simple way of writing the feature file. Actually, this can be factor more English way, but for start, this is easiest to start with because it's JSON, easy to read. If you want to make it more English, you can, but you need to write your own step definition to pass those variables. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
If you have a very complex application, you will have tons and tons of files, right?
Yep, correct.
Write down every single.
Yeah, the behavior. So to get started, it's best to start with the new feature that you want to develop rather than implementing everything that you already have.
Okay.
Yeah, start with things that you slowly build up from there. Yeah, still keep your existing testing framework there, but depends the use case. But somehow some of the developers doesn't like Cucumber because it's troublesome to maintain. If you have a lot of people to use, it's best because each certain group of people will focus on certain layers rather than one person doing repeated work, everyone jump. So if you don't have much developer, Cucumber might be a pain to maintain. Yeah. If you have a lot of developer, then they can focus on certain part of the layer. Yeah. So yeah. Hello, Swimming Tristan. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah. Cool. So,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah. So anything that you want to share about DevKami to the group here?
No, not really.
What you know about the open data?
Oh. Open Data Hackathon, the Penang one, or which one?
I thought there was a one online one from KL.
There's an Open Data Hackathon in KL. Do you know about it?
Swimming, do you know about this?
Swimming, your mic is not working.
You are muted.
Is it? Hello? Swimming?
Swimming.
It's okay. Let him respond.
Okay, but no, sorry, I haven't.
Okay. So from Penang, we actually have a hackathon. What it's called already? Let me open up. So in Penang, we have a group called Penang Tech. It's more on the free workshop in the BM side. So I conduct free workshops for people in the mainland, and we have shares information on things that happen in Penang. So there's a hackathon government by the Penang government for open data. So
Like no sort of information other than the hackathon is happening.
yeah. So from here, I only managed to get one very clear rules. Let me close this. So here, this is the comment. So for this hackathon, everything that you work on that hackathon will be owned by the state government.
Oh, interesting.
Everything, the ideation, whatever you do on there, is owned by the government. So that's the catch. Don't do things that you want to sell. Do things that you cannot do by own, but it's more to the government that you want the government to do. Then do it there.
Because actually the cash prize is quite lucrative.
Yeah. So you can do a voting system or public transport system that you cannot do by yourself. Put there. Things that you want to improve, right? Anything, Swimming? Are you back?
No.
I cannot hear you, Swimming. Oh, we can hear you now. Oh.
Hello? Swimming?
No, that was me.
Still no.
Speaking, yeah. Swimming is
Muted.
mute or something.
Okay. I think, Swimming, I think you need to use your laptop mic. Is it working? Yeah, I cannot hear.
You might need to check the permission.
It's okay. Then we go to the events that's coming up. So there's a few events in Penang. Blockchain event. If you haven't heard of it, you can Google it. It's there. There's a Python meetup in Penang also. We have Docker meetup also. See anything more?
All right,
And
can you hear me now?
Yay! Swimming is here.
I muted myself for silly reason. Okay, so there's a national data hackathon.
Yep.
That one I look at the rules pretty okay, in a way that you own everything yourself. Some data set, if you have to use their data set, but if you upload, you actually have to upload to them.
Okay.
So,
do you have the link?
Yeah, I already shared just now.
Let me open.
Never mind. Let me. It's next week, so it's very tight. But the cool thing is, it's an online hackathon. But you have to. Okay, I share on the chat.
Yep.
It's actually online hackathon. So meaning you can do online, but on next week, no 20 plus, you have to actually attend a briefing to confirm that you can participate. Online registration, but you have to be available on the day for briefing.
Okay.
So you can be individual on this, and if you look at it, you have to use the data set, but the product can be owned by you. I believe the data can be owned by you.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the national one.
Oh, Cool.
So, and it's online, so you do not need to be there other than the day of briefing.
Nice.
So yeah, so there's a national data hackathon. So the schedule is a little more sane compared to, say, wait, let me move back a little. It's a little more sane compared to on-site hackathon, 2 days. I mean, on the other hand, most people have day jobs, so it doesn't really change that much. But there's that lah.
Okay. Yeah. Malaysian governments open up their data sets. So their data sets for you to do things with it.
So
Yep.
yeah, pull it down and then analyze.
Yep. So you can pull the government provided data.
Yeah, but the data set is a hit or miss. So just so you know, some is okay, some is bad. As usual, because the whole thing is the Open Data Initiative happens to be there and happens to be run by a relatively powerful agency, which currently in a political situation, but let's not go there for now. It's a hit or miss, but some is pretty good lah.
Okay.
So yeah,
Cool.
I'm going to
So-
stop for now.
Yep.
Stop presenting.
So let's.
Loving your t-shirt.
That is nice.
Yeah, it's about a read-write government. So you have to able to give feedback, change, and update all various aspects. So
And execute.
huh?
And execute them.
Yeah, why not? Why not? It's not the worst idea. In the end of the day, you have to be. In the end of the day, you have to be available, make changes. You have to be proactive. So it's not just government do everything. You have to do something. Government have to do something. So yeah.
So let's go to.
So that's the NGO I'm working on, SINA project. That's what we're working on. Transparency mostly, but also the idea of opening up government for various reasons. So yeah, you can visit SINA project to know more. Then do not waste your time. Ping us through the website. You can, so we can use some feedback. So that's all from me lah.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the next session of the talk. Let me see whether I still got it. Already closed it. Yeah. Okay, so now we go for 5 Ruby tips. Anyone have Ruby tips to share? Anything that's from work? Small tips? No? Okay. Okay, it's okay. Maybe next one. Yep, next session. So we have RubyConf coming up October 25th and 26th in KLCC. So this year there won't be a red dot in Singapore. So a lot of speakers overseas will come to KL. Right? Yeah, red dot is an annual Ruby conference in Singapore. Yeah. So this year they won't be doing it. They take a break for 1 year. So there'll be more people coming to KL. If you're interested, go to this link and register. Next is shoutouts. Anyone have hiring shoutouts? Anything shoutouts? Whatever. Because we will post it in our group. Anyone is hiring? Okay. Ruby? JavaScript is okay. JavaScript developer? Okay. JavaScript dev for which company?
Energy projects.
Bio Energy Projects. Vue.js and Electron. Vue.js. Oh, okay. S and Electron. Sharp. Okay. Anyone? Any shoutouts? No? Events, things coming up? Anything? Because you will post to our Ruby group. So those didn't attend will actually see this message also. Nothing? Okay. Cool. So thank you for being here, and see you next month, the second Tuesday of the month. So the venue we haven't decided. It might be here, it might be ACAT, it might be anywhere. We will decide when the event's near, and we looking for speaker every time. Like, so yeah, we have a more successful meetup. Anything from KL that want to add in?
We got a few. Let's see. We had a JavaScript meetup and DevOps meetup next week. Also,
JavaScript meetup is tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, it's tomorrow. Damn it. Okay. Then what else?
DevOps on Tuesday next week.
Correct. Then we had a coffee session for Python Malaysia. Why coffee session? Because I am too lazy to create an official meetup, so we just have coffee among Python people. So that's on 25th, I think. So yeah.
Okay. So anything, Tristan? No? So I think we will end here.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Bye. So how do I cancel this?